Hey, this is Ramon Channels Alpha 4, and this is a different angle. I'm going to be doing a response video to Grr Mania. He sent me this link and he asked me to do it. I just got done with the workout. This is not part of my regular videos, so you'll have to excuse the unpreparedness, but here we go.
Why did God put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden, knowing beforehand Adam and Eve would disobey?
Okay. Why did God put the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden? Let's start there. So, according to most Orthodox theology, you start off with a very small soul, and you want to have a full or mature soul before you die. You want to think of, as Catholics think of purgatory, you want to be as holy as possible at your death. So you want to grow. A tree grows, life grows, a human grows, a baby grows. So too your soul must grow. So in the idea of this concept, the knowledge of good and evil is a necessary evil, is what some people would say. It's what we call original sin. So that necessary evil, the ability to commit sin, has to be there. If that temptation is not there, you're not truly free. You have to have the ability to disobey. If you don't have the ability to disobey, then you are not truly free. So to be truly free, you have to have that ability. And if you have that ability, it may express itself. Or as you, who may be a determinist, may say, it must express itself. Obviously, those who believe in free will would disagree with that. But just to be clear, not all Christians believe in free will. Some Christians believe in determinism and hard determinism, although they call it predestination. So there you go. All right, now the other half of this is, why would he set the system up knowing beforehand that Adam and Eve would disobey? Well, okay. So God doesn't control you. He doesn't make you do anything. But he can see everything for all time. Okay? He sees the past, he sees the future, he sees everything all at once because he exists outside of time and outside of the universe. He's not part of this reality. So he can see and know all. So he knows what you're going to do, so he can set things up so you can do them, but he himself is not choosing for you. So you have to have the ability to work against him. You have to have the ability to deny him. You have to have the ability to choose your own path. And to be able to do that, there has to be a way for you to express that. So he was simply setting that system up and letting us go. Beyond that, we do not know the reasoning of God. And it would be foolish for any Christian to try to claim they do know the reasoning of God. Question 2.
Sin entered into Satan's heart along with countless other angels that followed him. Does that mean sin exists in heaven?
So the first thing that he says here is that sin entered into Satan's heart. I'm not familiar with this verse. If that is from the Bible, then I've read it 6 times. I don't know it. In the Old Testament, well, first off, the snake in the garden is not Satan in the Old Testament. The snake is actually a representation of Baal, okay, or Marduk. It is not a representation of Satan. Satan in the Old Testament is actually an angel, and that's the job. And the word Satan actually means witness, and it's more like, okay, so you have an advocate lawyer and you have a prosecuting lawyer. That's what Satan is. Satan is a job of an angel. It's not the name of an angel. The actual fallen angel in the Old Testament is called Azrael. Okay? That's the actual fallen angel, not Satan. So, what happens between the Old Testament and the New Testament that changes Satan into the Satan that we know? I don't know. Sometime during the Maccabean period, when the Hellenistic period, during the rule of Alexander the Great's generals, either Ptolemy or possibly the Seleucids, whoever was influencing Judea, their influence and the religious, cultural influence, this is where the idea of purgatory comes in, the idea of heaven and hell comes in during this time period. So whatever influence was going on there changed Satan from being a job to being a name. I'm not really sure, and I'm not sure when that change happened, because the Old Testament was actually written after Jesus' death. Like, there's no other way to say it. The Bible was written after Jesus died. Okay, so, and it was written in Greek, and he spoke Aramaic and read Hebrew. So I don't know. I don't even know if when Jesus was saying Satan, if the word that he was using is the word Satan. Okay? Because he was speaking Aramaic. The word Satan might not even be that word. It could be a completely different pronunciation. And also he could have been speaking in Hebrew, which would have been the Hebrew pronunciation of whatever that was. So I don't know how that development happened. Then the next part is that with countless other angels. Well, okay, so now we're kind of jumping around. So we went from Old Testament, we went from Genesis to New Testament, back to Genesis. So the fall comes from man, and man is the one who brought sin into reality, into the world. It is man's free will that brought sin, not the devil. The devil didn't bring sin. So, as far as I can understand from this question, you would be talking about the fallen angels and the Nephilim. So if you're talking about the fallen angels and the children of angels and men, that was actually just a way to explain the other gods and goddesses of other cultures. So in the ancient theology, this the idea of fallen angels was a way to explain that all the demigods were the children of fallen angels and men. Okay? So that means that all the gods of the other religions were just angels in disguise trying to fool men and to get them to worship them. That's just what that was. That's the explanation there. That's an explanation so that way one group of religious people can look at another group of religious people and say, oh, that's what that is, and I'm not worried about it. Then the last part of this question is, does that mean sin exists in heaven? No. No. The plain answer is no. Heaven exists outside of reality. So outside of reality, there is no sin in heaven. Just isn't. So outside of reality, outside of existence, outside of time and space, no, in heaven there is no sin. We don't know where heaven is. We don't know what heaven is. But in heaven there would be no sin. Okay, once you get there, you've already made all your choices. You're making all your free will choices here. Okay? In this reality. Question 3.
If God knows what it would take to make me believe, yet he doesn't do whatever that is, and I eternally suffer as a result, isn't that his fault?
So, here's the funny thing about that question, is that my girlfriend is an atheist, and she was actually asking me this, not in a challenging way, in a very serious conversation, where she was asking me about this qualifier. So, how would I answer this to her? Well, I would say that in Catholicism we have this thing called irresistible ignorance. So if you don't know the rules and you do things to be the best type of person you can be, to live the life as best as you can, you'll still get to heaven. There's also a way to get to heaven through grace. Okay? So in Catholicism, there is grace and, well, in Judaism, there's works. Okay? In Catholicism, there's grace and works. And in Protestantism, there's just grace. Well, in Catholicism, there's both. So you can do good deeds but God still has to let you in. Okay? God can choose to let anyone in that he wants. That's just how that works. So we don't actually control that. The Pope, when he declares someone a saint, he's not letting them into heaven. He's saying, as far as we can tell here on earth, it's definitely guaranteed this person's in heaven based on what we understand. So what the Pope is doing is saying, based on what we understand, this guy got into heaven. They're not saying we're letting them into heaven. They're saying, no, he's already there, or she's already there. That's what a saint is. A saint isn't us saying saying they get to go to heaven. A saint is the church saying, we recognize that this person is already in heaven. That's what that is. Okay, so he doesn't ask this, but he's saying, is that fair? I think it's completely fair. You have free will. Eternal suffering. Hell, as I explained in one of my videos, doesn't actually mean hell. It's a bad translation of the word Sheol in Gehenna, which you do have a question later that acknowledges this. Even if you don't know you're acknowledging it, you do, and it's a good question. But here in this context, hell just means Sheol or Gehenna, okay? And eternal suffering, the suffering is that your last moment of consciousness will be the realization that God exists, followed by your oblivion. You no longer exist. Death. Okay, that's what hell is. Hell is dying death. Heaven is living eternal life. Okay, so eternal consciousness would be heaven, and unity with God, while hell is distance from God, or being away from God's light, or being away from God's sight, and non-existence. That's what hell is. So suffering here, though we take it literally, you would take it metaphysically, since you don't believe in metaphysics, or since many of the atheists who talk to or who are on my channel and comment don't believe in metaphysics. From your perspective, I don't think you have to worry about it. From my perspective, I'd be very concerned, and I hope you go to purgatory and not hell. In case you're wondering, place of fire, purgatory. Purgatory burns away the sins so that we can go to heaven. Hell is not burning and all that. Hell is non-existence and distance from God. It's the knowledge that God is real and you don't get to be with him. All right. Next question. And I lost track.
Why does Jesus tell us to turn the other cheek and to love our enemies when he plans to cast all of his enemies into a lake of fire?
Okay. So like I said, he does acknowledge the Gehenna thing with the lake of fire. So, all right. So why does Jesus tell us to turn the other cheek? Because he's saying that the rules of the Old Testament had lost their original meaning and people were following the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law. And the law was fulfilled in him, so we don't have to worry about that. We now have to follow the 4 major rules, which is love God, love our neighbor, love our enemy, and love ourselves. Okay? So that's what that's about. He doesn't want physical violence. But he does take strong words. But most of the strong words he takes are in Revelation. And here's the thing about Revelation. Revelation is a book of coded poetry written to the people surviving under Nero, the Christians under Nero who were being persecuted. And it is a message that eventually the Christians will win and get to be free from Nero. Okay, it's a prophecy that eventually a good emperor will come and free them. It's that Rome will eventually accept them. That's what it is. It's not a message of Jesus is going to come hurt people. Okay? It's a message written to Christians in code, and it's a message of hope. And if you go back to Psalms, you can see a lot of that. If you go back to Isaiah, you go back to other apocalyptic writing, you will see that this is how this style of writing works. It's actually a genre on its own. Okay, so there you go.
If I told you to love me, or else I will let you suffer forever, would you consider that free will?
Let me go back to the Old Testament real quick. I am a jealous God. Okay? God's morals are not your morals. And his rules are the correct rules. That's the game that religious people are playing, no matter what religion they are in. Okay, so let's begin with that. Secondly, again, not all Christians believe in free will. I happen to, so I will defend this point. But, yes, that is complete free will. And your options are not as simple as this is your one and only shot. You have a whole lifetime to decide whether or not you believe or not. You can decide you believe in your last 5 minutes of life and repent, and as long as it's a true repentance and he will know, you're fine. The saying is only God can know and judge a man's heart. Only Jesus can do that. No human can judge you, period. No Christian should be judging you, period. And there's a lot of judgment out on the internet. There's a lot of judgment out on TV, televangelist preachers. There's a lot of judgment. And they shouldn't be doing that. They just shouldn't be. But yeah. So you have a whole lifetime to figure out whether or not you want to accept. So seems fair to me. And yes, that is free will. Because there are consequences. And that you can't get away from.
Free will. Did Judas Iscariot have the free will to not betray Jesus?
Yes. So he's asking, did Judas Iscariot have the free will not to betray Jesus? Yes. 100% yes. He had the ability not to do it. Now, there are theologians and philosophers who have argued that if he didn't do it, somebody else would have taken that role. It's the same question with the Virgin Mary, which is if the Virgin Mary would have said no, somebody else in the line of David would have said yes. So that's how that goes. There would have been contingency plans for things that are destined to happen. Because we have free will, and because predestiny exists to some extent, and because God is omnipotent and can see everything at all time, he can insert his will where he chooses. He's not going to interfere with our free will, but he has certain things that he wants to happen. For instance, like death. You're going to die. No matter what happens, you're going to die. So these are just things. And eventually the universe will be destroyed. These are just things. This is going to happen. Eventually the universe will end. Eventually you will die. So yes, you have free will. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some set events that are going to happen and are going to take place no matter what. Whether or not you participate in those events are up to you. So yeah, you do have free will. If I'm going to go somewhere to get into a fight with someone at a bar, the person has the ability to run away from the fight. That doesn't mean I'm not going to go in there what I want to do. If I go and I say a joke that someone doesn't like, they have the ability to react in any infinite number of ways. How they react is up to them, but I'm going to do what I was going to do regardless, which is make the joke. All right, let's continue on.
Do you have any doubts, big or small, in your faith that you try to suppress or ignore?
Okay, so here's a question of doubt. Now, in fact, two of my friends actually, I've had this conversation twice today. One expressed doubt in their faith, the other one expressed that they have doubt about faith. Doubt is very important. In the Old Testament, wrestling with God is a very important developmental state in accepting faith. So, doubt is a good thing. Question and test everything. That is a dictate from the Bible. You need to test every maxim and every principle, and you need to find out what the truth is, and you need to seek wisdom. Okay? Wisdom is very important. Now, that being said, your question is not, do other people have doubts? Because obviously you know that other people have doubts because you have doubts. Otherwise, you would be a believer. No, I don't have any doubts currently. Did I once have doubts about things? Yes, especially about Paul. Paul made me doubt a lot of things. I eventually came to terms with Paul, and once I did, my faith got stronger. But yeah, it took me a while to deal with a lot of the things that Paul said. So, doubts are normal, they're natural, and you should have them, and you should express them. In fact, most religious people would say express them to God. Put them in your prayers. Talk to God. Have a conversation with God. Express it out loud. So doubt's a very good thing. It's a very good thing. Write it down. Think about it. Meditate on it. Read about it. Of course, a religious person is going to say read the Bible to learn about it. But yeah, or whatever religion you are. Read your holy book to learn the answers to your doubts.
Putting the Bible aside, do you personally believe that every single non-believer you meet deserves to suffer agonizing pain for all eternity simply for not repenting and believing in God, even though some of them may not know God or may not know the right God?
All right, I already answered this previously, but I'm just going to do it real quick. Christians are not allowed to judge other people, period. They're not supposed to. So anyone who's judging you is already misbehaving. They're not following the rules. Only God can judge. Only Jesus can judge your heart, or can know your heart, depending on what translation you want to use. That being said, the Catholic Church has a thing called irresistible ignorance. If you're irresistibly ignorant, and that doesn't just mean that you've read the Bible once or you heard the Bible once, it means if you've never accepted the Bible, then you're not held responsible for the things the Bible teaches. The original covenant was with the Jewish people. The original covenant was not with the entire world. It was with one group of people. In fact, the original covenant was with one man, Abraham. Okay? And if you want to say the original covenant was with Adam, you could say that too. But the original covenant was with one man, Abraham. Okay? That's it. Then it became for a family, and then it became for a people. It isn't until Jesus Christ that the covenant became for anyone who wanted in. But the thing about covenants is that it's a contract. You have to agree to sign in. So, if you have never been baptized, you've never accepted Jesus Christ in your heart, and you've never been a Jew or a Muslim or a Christian of any kind, you're not held responsible for anything that's in the Bible. Period. You're just not. Now, if you're an adult and you're over the age of 15, because I think that's the age of consent in the Bible, if you're over the age of 15, then if you make a dedication to God, you are now held responsible for that dedication. So if you're Hispanic, after your quinceanera, if you're Jewish, after your bar mitzvah, once you've made that dedication to become of your faith, then if you deny your faith, then you're held accountable for breaking your oath. It's about keeping an oath. But if you've never made that oath, you're not responsible for that oath. You haven't agreed or consented to the covenant, you're not part of the covenant. That's how that works. Okay? In fact, in the Old Testament, there are 2 or 3 really fun characters. And I just read one right now where this guy, Balaam, I think, with his donkey. I think I just read that a few days ago. There are non-Jews who God chooses to favor, that he calls righteous or he calls good. Okay? So, and there are people in the Old Testament that God just says this person's righteous, or this person's good, or this person's favored, or this person's blessed. And once that happens, it doesn't matter. Once God's grace is upon you, you're of the elect. Okay? In the New Testament, the invitation is now extended to everyone, not just the Jews, and not just people of the Levant. So there you go.
God hardened Pharaoh's heart, but why didn't God just soften it instead?
Okay. Why didn't God soften Pharaoh's heart? Because free will. Pharaoh could have done anything, and he chose for the harder thing. God knew beforehand what Pharaoh would choose, and he simply encouraged him in choosing. He did not make him choose, he encouraged him to choose. That being said, that answer should not be satisfying to you, because it is a narrative device. The expression God hardens someone's heart is an idiom in literature of that time period. And that answer should satisfy you plenty.
How can an all-perfect creator create a creation that has the desire to be less than perfect?
I don't quite understand this question. I have the desire to be very perfect. Almost everybody I know has a desire to be perfect. I know very few people that want to be the worst possible versions of themselves. So this might be a self-esteem problem. I don't know.
What I mean by that is, even with free will, why do we desire to sin if we were made by and in the image of a perfect, sinless God?
Okay. So, we have free will because God wants us to have free choice. We are of this earth. We are not, our physical bodies are of this earth. Therefore, we are animals. Our physical bodies are the bodies of animals. Our souls, which are part of our bodies, right now we're one, our souls are of the divine. And we have a human nature. So we have three natures. Okay, we have the animal nature, the human nature, and the divine nature. What we are is we're here. We don't want to aim down. So we want to either stick at our nature or go high. If you're religious, you want to shoot for the divine nature. You want to become one with God. Okay? That's the way it works. And this is the way it works with almost every religion, whether you're talking Taoism or Buddhism. There are multiple paths, but there's only one true path. I don't know what to tell you. That's the way it is in almost all the ancient religions. There's only one true path. All right, so that's it. I would like to thank Grr Mania for inviting me to do this, and I hope he enjoys. And anyone watching this, comment down below and let me know what you think of my answers. I'm really tired. It's 11:38 at night. And I've had a long day. I've had a very long day. Peace, like and subscribe. Talk to you all later. Bye.